This is Twit.
Well, the second biggest telecom in the world admitted that dozens of governments routinely spy on its customers. International telecom giant Vodafone said in a report today that governments have direct access to the company's infrastructure, enabling spy agencies and police to listen to conversations, often without even asking Vodafone's permission, as well as track the location of users and even monitor the websites they visit. Matthew Sparks is the deputy head of technology for the Telegraph newspaper, and he joins us now. Welcome, Matthew.
Hello there. Thank you.
And, of course, he's calling in by the phone. Now, the one-year anniversary of the first Edward Snowden revelations was yesterday, and today Vodafone publishes this report, it's almost like a confessional about what's been going on all this time. Why are they publishing this now, do you think?
Well, it's an interesting question. Like you say, it's 1 year since the Snowden revelations. And ever since then, we've been sort of forced to rethink our relationships with these carriers and with the companies we use online and with our own governments. And just really, we've been hit in the face by this information of really who has access to our what we thought was personal and private information. So you could cynically look at this and think, yes, Vodafone have been forced to disclose this. On the other side of the coin, you could think, well, they're one of the first people to release a report as detailed as this, and I know sort of own up to what they are giving government. So, yeah, they've been backed into a corner, but also they are one of the first people to do this. So it's an interesting one, really.
It certainly is. Now, this is a 40,000-word report. It's an absolutely massive report. Nobody made them do it. They did it on their own. And now Vodafone just, in the U.S., I don't think Vodafone has a huge amount of mind share, but they have 400 million customers around the world. They are a gigantic company, and they're in dozens of countries.
Absolutely enormous.
Yeah. And so...
Sorry, go on.
No, you go ahead. You had a point to make.
Well, like you say, perhaps not an enormously recognizable brand in the US, but the second biggest carrier in the world, and like you say, 400 million users, and they're in 29 different markets, 29 different countries. So, I mean, certainly here in the UK, they're an enormously recognizable company. A huge market share in mobile and broadband. So it is huge news.
Yes, and some of the countries, I believe that 6 countries, they have an arrangement whereby the governments can tap phones and without even notifying Vodafone, let alone asking for permission. And this is really interesting because my first response to this, my knee-jerk reaction to this news was those dirty, rotten Vodafone so-and-sos. And then as I started reading it, I'm realizing, they make the point in their report that everything that they're talking about in each of these countries, and of course some of the countries they're not allowed by those national governments to even talk about it, but everything they're talking about in those countries are rules that are applied to all carriers in those countries. It's kind of like the carriers in these countries are all keeping this shared secret of exactly what has been going on, and they're basically saying that these governments often they won't let you operate in their countries unless you follow their rules, even if their rules are even if they're not democracies, even if the rules are unfair or should be illegal or whatever. Doesn't matter. If you want to do business in those countries, you have to follow those rules, which raises the question, should companies like Vodafone be in those countries if they're contributing to things like human rights violations, that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, that's absolutely correct. I mean, reading between the lines of the report, well, not even between the lines, Vodafone are calling for an end to this kind of what they call direct access, which is where, like you say, these 6 countries, which they don't name, they can't name them, 6 countries have secret cables, basically, which can siphon off any data that the governments want. They're obviously not keen on doing that. It leaves a bad taste in the mouth, but it is the law of the country they're in. And they don't, if they want to be in those countries, they don't have a choice. But they do have a choice not to be in those countries if they don't want to be. So, they have chosen to operate in those markets and to abide by those laws, really.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that there are 29 countries here. They all have different laws, and it's a hugely complex sort of issue, really. I mean, some of the countries won't even let Vodafone say what they do. Vodafone seems to have sort of got around this by saying there are 6 that have this direct access, but every one of these 29 countries has different laws which allow the government to do different things. So it's a very tangled web that they're trying to unpick in this report. It's like I say, it's 40,000 words. Part of that is just because the issue is so complex. But the sort of thrust of the truly startling thing here is the 6 countries that have this direct access. It means that the government doesn't have to say, we would like a warrant to look at this person or to look at this person. They can just siphon off absolutely everything and choose what's really is justifiable without any kind of oversight, really.
I have to say, my first reaction to this was, oh, okay. And I think that's scary. I think it scared me, and it's scary that I think a lot of the people around the world had the same reaction. Over the last year, we've been hit with report after report after report about spying, about what companies are doing with our information and our data. And here we sit with yet another revelation that is scary in its own right. But and I'm someone who cares about this stuff immensely, and yet I go, oh yeah, well, I just figured that they were doing that. I mean,
I suppose,
have we come to this point now where we're so cynical and we're so used to hearing these things that we're not really hit as hard as we should be by it? And that's my concern, that we've come to a point with all of this talk of privacy and data protection and everything that we've just almost accepted that we don't have the rights that we believe we should. Our data is not private and safe and secure, and we can't trust any of the companies that we do business with. And this is just the latest example of, well, I guess another one's doing it.
I think so much of this is new to legislation. Mobile phone networks and the internet and social networks and all of these things are so new. I mean, okay, there are people now who are adults who have had it their whole lives, but relatively speaking, these are new things. And laws and governments just haven't caught up yet. And I think what we're seeing now is them catching up. We're reaching a point of maturity where people are realizing what's going on. And from here, there'll be some kind of change. There will have to be some kind of change. Now, like you say, people are apathetic to these kind of, another story about this. But I think it's built into quite a mass of discontent now, really. People, I don't think there are many people who would quibble with the suggestion that government surveillance is perhaps too pervasive. I believe probably most people would agree with that now. So I do think that something will have to change, even though the response to each individual story is perhaps apathy.